So it seems Keir Starmer has truly stumbled into a verbal shredder, and guess who's at the controls? Joe Rogan and JD Vance, teaming up to dismantle this political non-event like a well-drilled podcast attack squad. If you thought Sir Keir's personality was a bit, shall we say, bland, just wait until they get stuck into his policies. Spoiler alert, they found absolutely nothing there. Get ready for some brutal honesty, a few awkward laughs, and the kind of grilling that would make even marshmallows nervous. Stick around after this. Starmer's political career might just need witness protection. I was chatting with a mate recently, and we were discussing one of the big dangers globally, which is, of course, nuclear proliferation. Though, mind you, the Biden administration doesn't seem to give a fig about it. We were talking about which truly Islamist country would get a nuclear weapon first. We thought, maybe Iran, or perhaps Pakistan already kind of fits the bill. But then we eventually settled on, actually, it might be the UK, since Labour just took charge. Did you know that over 95% of our viewers aren't subscribed to the channel? We totally get it, life gets busy, and sometimes it's easy to forget. But here's the thing, subscribing is completely free, and it really helps us keep creating the content you enjoy. So why not hit that subscribe button and join our community? It only takes a second, but it makes a world of difference to us. Thank you for your support. Because Keir Starmer, Britain's most human-shaped fog machine, has just been utterly verbally obliterated, dissected, and neatly packaged into political irrelevance by two chaps who couldn't be more different, yet both equally despise waffle, Joe Rogan and JD Vance. And you know things are bad when JD Vance, a bloke who sounds like he was put together in a Midwest garage from spare parts of a libertarian podcast, actually makes more sense on British politics than the chap who's campaigning to be our Prime Minister. Now in England, where people are getting nicked for tweets, there are something like 4,000 people who've been arrested for things they've said online that others deem hateful or problematic. That's what's happening here in England right now, isn't it? They've arrested thousands for social media posts. It's bonkers. Were they threatening people? They don't have to be, apparently. They don't have to be threatening at all. We also know there have been infringements on free speech that affect not just us Brits, of course, what we can do in our own country. Let's start with Starmer's crowning achievement, weaponicing boredom. This man speaks like a faulty answering machine, trained exclusively on insurance documents. His speeches are the auditory equivalent of cheap, peeling wallpaper, slowly flaking away out of sheer embarrassment. Somehow, he's managed to run an entire political campaign purely on vibes, specifically, the vibe of a soggy rice cake left out in the rain. Stage says, Dharma, that's what he said, and again it comes back to this idea, no, kiss it, put you on the world stage. And that's what you love, isn't it? If you love glad-handing with your globalist chums, sucking up to all the massive transnational corporations that are crushing small businesses in this country, this isn't about this country. This is putting us, yet again, giving, and we seem to be getting absolutely nothing in return. So, second question, and this is a criticism that's been thrown at you by voters, but also by members of your own shadow cabinet. Are you too boring to be the next Prime Minister? Well, let me take that one. The only thing that's boring is opposition. That's what's boring. The expressiveness of autoaggressive transformers is truly insane. I absolutely adore them. And then Rogan wades in, with all the subtlety of a bear wearing sunglasses indoors. He doesn't need to understand UK politics to spot utter rubbish when it's huffing and puffing through a badly rehearsed soundbite. Within minutes, he's asking the crucial questions. How is this man both spineless and rigid at the same time? How can one person embody both indecisiveness and smug certainty? With every sentence, Starmer looks like he's about to lead a revolution, but only if it's been approved by committee, written in triplicate, and doesn't upset the Liberal Democrats. This chap in England, Keir Starmer, the Labour leader aspiring to be Prime Minister of the UK, is frankly ruining the country, and the people seem to detest him too. It's a real shame because this country used to be great. What a pity. JD Vance, meanwhile, comes in swinging like a fella who's just stumbled upon British politics on a dare, and yet somehow his outsider perspective ends up making more sense than anything that's tumbled out of Starmer's mouth since he took the leadership crown from Jeremy Corbyn. Like a rather reluctant supply teacher inheriting a classroom on fire, Vance calls it out for what it is. Starmer's grand plan is simply to do everything the Tories did, but with more apologies and fewer facial expressions. And speaking of expressions, Starmer's face is like a screensaver for sheer disinterest. If you fed his entire campaign into an emotion detector, it would probably return a reading of meh in Comic Sans. Rogan practically bursts a blood vessel trying to fathom how someone can lead a major political party and still sound like they're explaining return policies at a DIY shop. He's not leading a political movement, he's managing a mid-level hair salon in a crumbling office block. London doesn't feel fully English to me anymore. UK leaders really ought to be looking out for citizens of the UK, or subjects, or whatever you chaps call yourselves. If non-stop immigration was the answer to creating wealth, prosperity, and lowering house prices, then London would be absolutely thriving. And I've got to tell you, I was in London last year, and it's not exactly doing brilliantly. Starmer's idea of bold reform is simply saying, let's do better, but with even less enthusiasm than someone ordering a decaf at 3 in the morning. The man has built an entire political identity around not offending anyone, which, ironically, is the only truly offensive thing about him. He could walk into a room full of toddlers and still somehow manage to pull lower than a fire drill. Every time he speaks, you can almost feel Britain collectively asking, is this truly the chap we're supposed to be backing? Rogan didn't need any fancy explanations, he just laid it all out bare. JD Vance, bless him, couldn't quite believe it either. Just imagine building your entire career on telling it like it is raw, unfiltered, unapologetic, and then you bump into a Keir Starmer, who treats conviction as if it's gluten, and he's severely intolerant. Watching Sir Keir campaign is akin to watching someone try to round up a thick fog. He keeps making vague gestures, seemingly hoping the weather will eventually organize itself into a coherent manifesto. It's not that he lacks principles, it's more that he appears to have downloaded every single one possible, like a rather confused robot buffering between different ideologies. Starmer doesn't actually stand for something, he just hovers gently near everything, rather like a hummingbird lost at a buffet of political nectar. One minute he's waving a progressive flag, and the next he's trying to outsmile investment bankers, as if he's auditioning for Most Lovable Technocrat of the Year. If leadership had a dating app profile, Starmer would swipe right on absolutely everyone, then ghost half of them, and then deliver a speech about shared values while live editing his policy document mid-sentence. Is free speech dead in this country? Well, I'm not across the specifics of that particular case, but let me outline the principles I would apply. Firstly, I am very much in favor of free speech. We've enjoyed free speech in this country for a very, very long time, and we protect it fiercely. However, I am equally against inciting violence against other people that has long been an offense in our country, and quite rightly so. So as I said, I don't know the specifics of this case, but free speech, yes, incitement to violence, no. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends in the United Kingdom, where the backward slide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons, in particular, squarely in the crosshairs. Just over 2 years ago, the British government actually charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Naturally, the government then urged readers to report any fellow citizen suspected of committing a thought crime in Britain. Across Europe, I fear free speech is in retreat. Starmer's more prone to flip-flopping than a robot vacuum cleaner in a round room. If he had a spirit animal, it would be a weather vane having a complete meltdown in a hurricane. He's a political shapeshifter, except every shape he takes is made of lukewarm jelly. One day he's waving at striking workers, the next he's writing LinkedIn posts about fiscal discipline, as if he's auditioning for a TED Talk titled, How to Kill Momentum with Spreadsheets. His promises are like toddler art, messy, lacking context, and destined for the recycling bin. Even JD Vance looked absolutely stunned as Starmer politely moonwalked out of yet another position. Rogan just blinked, like someone had suggested a diet of melted crayons. This isn't leadership, it's improv theater with endless policy disclaimers. Starmer doesn't stand for anything, he just hovers politely near everything while Britain desperately begs for some urgency. He sends calendar invites. He doesn't confront crises, he politely kisses them with a memo and hides behind vague statements. JD Vance is certainly putting the pressure on Keir Starmer again. Thank goodness for JD Vance, he says, adding that Keir Starmer must repeal these hate speech laws to secure a trade deal. He suggests there's a good chance of an agreement, but sources indicate his concerns over Starmer's apparent attack on free speech are still a red line. I truly hope that red line stays firmly in place. This isn't leadership, it's a crisis helpline staffed by someone who answers every single call with, tricky. Let's revisit that next fiscal year point. JD Vance absolutely nailed it. Starmer's entire existence is a masterclass in political evasion. He's the sort of chap who could get completely lost in a straight corridor, a man who genuinely believes strong leadership means whispering unity into a microphone while everyone else around him is shouting for clarity. Sir Keir's idea of bold action. Suggesting we might need another task force. He talks about reform in much the same way people discuss assembling flat-pack furniture, hesitantly, fearfully, and always with one eye on the nearest exit. And yet, somehow, he's still being framed as the safe choice. Safe? The man is so risk-averse he probably checks both sides of a revolving door before he even steps through it. If Britain is crying out for vision, Starmer is offering a rather smudged blueprint with a sticky note that just says later. When JD Vance, a chap built like a bar stool in a book club, looks at you and declares, "Even I don't know what this bloke stands for," it's not just bad, it's truly catastrophic. If clarity were currency, Starmer would be absolutely skint and borrowing talking points from expired think tank reports. This is what happens when you build a political persona out of press releases, endless apologies, and a crippling fear of commitment. Starmer isn't actually leading a party, he's merely managing public confusion, and the only consistent thing about Keir Starmer is the Trump administration is troubled by reports that some foreign governments are considering tightening the screws on U.S. tech companies with international operations. Now, America cannot and will not accept that, and we believe it's a terrible mistake, not just for the United States of America, but for your own country, for his own country. Joe Rogan didn't even have to put in much effort to land his punches, it was rather like roasting a paper bag with googly eyes. He pointed out that Starmer's leadership style makes watching paint dry look like a wild rave. This is the fellow who claims he's ready to lead Britain into the future, but only after running 3 focus groups, consulting his inner circle, and double-checking the general vibes on LinkedIn. JD Vance then added the cherry on top, noting that Starmer has no genuine base, just a scattered collection of people who dislike the Conservatives ever so slightly more than they actually distrust him. His supporters don't cheer, they just sigh politely. If enthusiasm were fuel, Starmer's campaign bus would have broken down in a Waitrose car park ages ago. You know your political brand is in dire straits when JD Vance, a man who built his career by dunking on the elite, looks at your carefully curated nothingness and just says, "Wow." Starmer isn't even offensive, he's just utterly confusing. Rallying behind him feels like cheering for a screensaver. The longer you stare, the more you start to question your own life choices. And the promises, oh, the promises. Starmer makes them like a magician pulling rabbits out of a hat, except the rabbits are invisible, and the hat is full of shredded manifestos from last month. He promises bold change, but only in PowerPoint slides. He vows to challenge the status quo, but only if the status quo gives its written consent. If he were any more cautious, he'd probably wear a helmet to bed. You know what he's got, Andrew? It's got non-player character energy. Do you know what that means? No, NPC. Unfortunately, NPC is non-player character. A main player character is your charismatic leader with loads of oomph. He hasn't got that, he's had a charisma bypass. Rogan and Vance agreed on one thing: if this is what Britain considers leadership, someone really ought to check for a carbon monoxide leak. Starmer isn't a threat to the establishment, he is the establishment, just with a bit more social anxiety. He's not here to shake things up. He's here to dust the shelves and alphabetize the status quo. By the end, Starmer wasn't a leader, he was a cautionary tale. Proof that charisma can't simply be downloaded, conviction can't be faked forever, and you truly can't lead by simply being the least offensive option in the room. Rogan called him out like a gym trainer watching someone bench press bubble wrap. JD Vance finished the job like a Southern lawyer dismissing a bad case with a smirk and a biscuit. Starmer came to unify. Instead, he became a human screensaver floating between press briefings, policy reversals, and the quiet hope that nobody asks any difficult questions.